Hello, sir. Shall I start now?
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the Center for Development of Intellectual Property and Research, it gives me immense pleasure to welcome all our distinguished dignitaries, members of the evaluation panel, fellows, academicians, researchers, industrial professionals, and viewers joining us live from across the globe. Welcome to the final research presentation, round one of the AI Fellowship Research Policy, class of 2026. This fellowship has been organized by Center for Development of Intellectual Property and Research in collaboration with Google for Education and Data and Society Research Institute and powered by the Community for Academic Research and Development Foundation. Over the last 2 months, our fellows have undergone an immense academic journey consisting of expert lectures, policy discussions, research mentorship, comparative legal analysis, and independent research. Each fellow was allotted a specific country to conduct an extensive study on its artificial intelligence policy, AI regulatory framework, AI governance, ethical AI framework, and national AI strategy and emerging legal developments. Today's presentation marks the culmination of that research journey. So, now before we commence the presentations, I would like to acknowledge the distinguished members associated with today's academic assessment. Today's presentation shall be evaluated by the Fellowship Evaluation Panel and the Board of Assessment, who are presently present backstage and will evaluate each presentation based on that fellowship assessment criteria. The presentations will also be conducted under the supervision of the Director Sir and the executive members of the CDIPR. We extend our sincere gratitude to all our evaluators for sparing their valuable time and contributing to this important academic exercise. Before inviting our fellows, kindly allow me to briefly explain the presentation guidelines. Each fellow has been allotted 5 minutes for their presentation, and the remaining 1 minute is reserved for the questions from the evaluation panel. The presentation timer will be strictly followed, and now I request all the fellows to keep their responses concise and academic. So, we shall now begin with the presentation session. I would like to invite our first fellow, Miss Vidushi, who has conducted research on the country uh, Belgium. May I request you to kindly switch on your microphone and begin sharing your presentation? You have exactly 5 minutes for your presentation. All the best for the presentation. Your time begins now.
Good morning, esteemed members of the expert review panel. Today I'm privileged to present the findings of my fellowship research on the artificial intelligence law, policy, and governance framework of Belgium. We will explore how the administrative heart of the European Union navigates the complex intersection of supranational AI regulation and a highly decentralized domestic landscape. Belgium presents a
Fellow, your
fascinating.
your screen and like your face is not visible. Your camera is off.
Am I
Yes.
visible?
Yes, you can continue.
Is my screen visible?
Yes, it's visible. You can continue now.
Oh, all right. Belgium presents a fascinating legal paradox. It is a nation boasting a world class AI ecosystem anchored by research hubs like IMAC and robust data center infrastructure. Yet it operates without a single bespoken national AI statute. Driven by severe labor shortages and an aging population, both the public and private sectors are rapidly adopting AI. However, doing so requires balancing Belgium's complex trilingual federated architecture with its role at the seat of the European Union. So, the question which is placed at hand is, how does a federated state govern a horizontal technology? The answer lies in coordinated strategy rather than centralized legislation. At the federal level, the National Convergence Plan coordinates regional initiatives to establish a smart AI nation. Moving on, the Flanders AI Policy Plan is the highly funded strategy focusing on the strategic basic research and the other panels like Wallonia and Brussels operate parallelly and sometimes overlappingly strategies which are functions as the strategies funding local innovation and digital upskilling. It is a patchwork of regional strategies held together by federal coordinated mechanisms like the AI Observatory. Legally, Legally, Belgium's posture is best described as constitutional deference. Because the European Union AI Act possesses direct effect, Belgium is preempted from passing contradictory domestic AI laws. Instead, the legal framework relies on the adaptive extension of legacy laws. The GDPR governs algorithmic data processing. The Code of Economic Law regulates AI in consumer markets, and traditional civil codes are stretched to cover AI liability. Belgium treats the European Belgium treats the European Union AI Act as its core AI law and relies on domestic administrative law to enforce it. Moving on, our research highlights that AI governance in Belgium is highly sectoral. In healthcare, the Federal Agency for Medicines applies existing medical devices rules to AI diagnostic tables. In the labor market, social dialogue and older frameworks like collective bargaining agreement number 39 are being adapted to regulate algorithm management. In the public sector, algorithms like radio welfare system are being deployed to harmonize benefits, though research shows this only results in partial harmonization due to remaining casework discretion. Internationally, Belgium punches well above its height. During its 2024 presidency of the Council of European Union, Belgium successfully brokered the final adoption of the European Union AI Act. It is a systematic contributor to the OECD AI Policy Observatory and advocate for sovereign European cloud infrastructure like GIX to reduce defense and public sector reliance on foreign hyperscalers. However, this framework faces highly structural voids. Firstly, Belgium has yet to operationalize the AI regulatory sandboxes mandated by the AI Act, leaving small to medium enterprises without a safe harbor for pre-market testing. Second, there is a profound legal void regarding the intellectual property. The law currently leaves purely AI generated outputs in the public domain and places a heavy burden on creators to opt out of data mining. Finally, there is no bespoke statute governing algorithmic decision making in the military or general public administration. The most acute challenge, however, is enforcement friction. To comply with the European Union AI Act, Belgium has distributed oversight across a central market surveillance authority, the Data Protection Authority, and an astonishing 21 sector supervising bodies. Moving on to address these vulnerabilities, our research proposes three key recommendations. Firstly, urgently formalize and operationalize national AI regulatory sandboxes to support domestic innovators. Secondly, drastically expand the technical auditing resources and interagency cooperation protocols among the designated market surveillance authorities. And thirdly, enact a dedicated domestic administrative statute for public sector AI to mandate transparency and human in the loop oversight, moving beyond the inadequate 1991 administrative motivation laws. In conclusion, Belgium's regulatory trajectory over the next 5 years will not be defined by sweeping new domestic statutes. Instead, it will be defined by incremental institutional consolidation. Belgium's success will depend entirely on its ability to synchronize its 21 regulatory bodies, close existing enforcement gaps, and effectively translate its supranational European Union obligations into a workable, localized governance regime. Thank you.
Okay, participant, what is your key observation throughout this fellowship research?
My key observation regarding the Belgium AI law and governance for fellow governance has been uh, regarding the conflict of its intellectual property and the conflict it has been always there with the creators, and how and the secondly I have my second observation has majorly relied upon how the human decision making still need to be regularized through these AI algorithms.
Okay, do the Belgium have any policy regarding their AI ethics?
They do have certain policies like the Flanders AI policy, which is currently in operational at the national level.
All right, thank you. We'll be moving ahead with the next participant.
Thank you so much for the insightful presentation, Vidushi. Now we move on to the next fellow, Mr. Amok Chowdhury, who is representing the country France.
Hello, ma'am.
All the
Hello, sir.
best.
Good
Your
morning.
timer begins now.
Thank you. Very good morning to the esteemed panel. And my allotted country has been France. And I'm very immensely grateful to present my research findings on AI law policy and governance framework for the country of France. So I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, it is visible.
Am
Continue.
I
Yes, it
audible?
is visible.
Yes. So thank you so much for confirming. So firstly, I would like to introduce the AI ambition of the French state. When it comes to France, France is very actively trying to pursue a sovereign AI technology ecosystem so that it does not have to rely on the technological dominance of the United States or China. To achieve this goal, France is trying to build what is called a third tech stack, which is basically a complete and vertically integrated technology ecosystem which will be fully controlled by France. To achieve this, France is precisely trying to balance the EU market rules along with its own strict constitutional framework. In my second slide, which is basically focusing on the policy and governance framework of France, to achieve their sovereign AI tech ecosystem, France has implemented something called the France 2030 plan, which is basically an investment of 54 billion euros to build sovereign physical hardware and infrastructure, as well as to fund domestic AI companies and labs like Mistral AI and Qt. Why France is investing so much to develop sovereign physical infrastructure as well as to develop AI companies and labs is because it wants total vertical integration, which basically means that France wants to have full control not only over the physical hardware but also over the AI software as well. Now, I'd like to focus on the key laws and regulations governing the AI law in France. Presently, instead of writing a completely new AI rulebook, France is largely relying on the overarching EU AI Act. But there are certain situations which are not dealt within the EU AI Act. To deal with such immediate problems, France is passing specific domestic laws. For example, we have the SREN law, which is basically securing and regulating the digital space, wherein France penalizes sharing deepfakes without permission. There has also been enactment of the Olympic Games law, which allowed the use of AI video cameras for monitoring, but at the same time, it explicitly banned the use of facial recognition owing to privacy concerns. Here in my slide number 4, I am trying to focus on the institutional governance and the system in France for the process of AI governance. Currently, the system in place is very much scattered and fragmented, and as it is termed in my slide, it is very much balkanized. In the past, France missed a legal deadline to designate a national competent authority, which was supposed to enforce the EU AI Act throughout the country of France. Now, as a result of this, different agencies are trying to handle different aspects of AI governance. For example, the DGCCRF is handling market coordination and fair practice, while the ANSM is trying to handle medical algorithms and healthcare. Because of such a scattered system and also a legal void created due to not designating a single national competent authority, there is immense pressure being mounted on the CNIL, which is the National Commission on Informatics and Liberty, which is the lead privacy regulator in France, to take up AI governance disputes. And currently, the state of CNIL is that it is facing severe staff as well as financial shortages, due to which the institutional governance system in France is very much balkanized. In my next slide, I am trying to focus on the critical analysis section of my research findings. Firstly, because there is an administrative void created due to failure to designate one central authority like the National Competent Authority, it is leading companies and businesses in a state of confusion about how should they deploy their AI systems. At the same, at the same time, there are algorithmic surveillance fights happening between the government and the civil societies in public spaces. In fact, the highest administrative court in France, called the Conseil d'État, has blocked some AI camera projects for violating the privacy rights and bypassing the internal security code of France. In my next slide, I'm trying to focus on the major findings of my research project. Firstly, for France, data sovereignty comes first. France is very strict about keeping public data safe, and for implementing that, it is using a mandate called Secnum Cloud 3.2, which requires sensitive data to be stored on highly secure and localized domestic French networks. Secondly, the second observation of my research project has been that France in the past rejected the Darkos bill. Now, this was a bill which would have made it easier for artists to sue AI companies if they found it reasonable that their work was being used to train AI models without their permission. By rejection of the Darkos bill, what France is trying to show to the world that it is actively trying to attract big AI labs to boost its AI businesses, even though if it means sacrificing some of the copyright protections. So, in my slide number 7, I'm trying to focus on the policy recommendations which could be helpful from the AI governance system of France. Firstly, as we have discussed, France needs to urgently designate a central national competent authority so that the businesses and the companies know exactly who is in charge and what are the rules. Secondly, the Central Regulatory Authority, the CNIL, needs more money, more funding, and more dedicated tech experts so that it can actually audit AI systems instead of just reacting to problems and becoming a victim of the messed up system currently in place. Thirdly, the French government needs to harmonize the rules across different sectors so that it becomes easier for AI companies working across different domains to ensure compliance. In my last slide, which is the concluding slide, I am trying to focus on how France is actually using its domestic frameworks and trying to project soft power onto the world to influence global AI governance. The ultimate aim of France is to use its domestic rules to influence how the entire world governs AI. In 2025, France hosted the Paris AI Action Summit, wherein France mobilized a group of countries to focus on public interest and open source AI. Now, this is very important because France took a very different approach from the deregulation trends we have seen in the US and the UK, where they try to give maximum legal leverage to AI companies. At last, through its leadership in international agreements like the Council of Europe Treaty, France is aiming to export its ethical standards to the entire world and establish a global benchmark for AI safety. And with these observations, I'd like to conclude my research presentation. Thank you.
Okay, fellow, what is your key takeaway?
So, sir, my most important takeaway is that currently France needs to urgently designate a national competent authority, wherein it clearly mentions that this would be the single authority responsible for implementing AI governance in France, because currently businesses and AI companies are very much confused in France about which regulations do they need to follow. Also, because the most important regulatory authority in France is the CNIL, which is the National Commission on Informatics and Liberty. It is currently understaffed and lacks the necessary funds to audit AI systems. And currently, it is only reacting as a victim to this messed up system in place. So the government needs to give a massive amount of funding, as well as ensure there is an induction of dedicated technological experts. Also, because AI is something that is being deployed across multitude of sectors, from healthcare to technology to surveillance, the government needs to harmonize the compliance requirements across all these sectors, so that AI companies and businesses in France find it easier to ensure compliance when reporting to a national authority like the CNIL.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. Now we'll be moving ahead to the next fellow.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the presentation, Amok. Now we move on to the next fellow, Ms. Sankhya, who has conducted research on the country Greece. All the best for the presentation and kindly follow the time limit. Your timer begins now.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible, but you are
Yes,
not
Sankhya.
visible.
Okay. Yeah,
Yes,
is it now?
yes, you can start your presentation.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. I will be presenting on the AI law, policy, and governance framework of Greece. And we will explore how Greece is navigating the sovereign compute and supranational law. So, to understand where Greece is today, we must look at its evolution first. So, in the pre 2000 era, the state has suffered from a paper centric opacity and fragmentation. Then, in the 2010 and 2090s, uh, uh, it has brought a crisis driven transparency, making digital publication a legal prerequisite for the administrative acts. Then, between 2019 and 2022, we saw a large shift with the digital government governance portal of gov.gr, which reduced the administrative processing time by up to 97%. And then, in present, from 2022, the Greece is in the era of algorithmic governance driven by Law 4961 of 2022 and the integration of EU AI Act. Okay, so this rapid evolution has created a first key finding, which I call the double transition paradox. So on left, we can see a very aggressive public sector push, where the broad public AI adoption sits at 69%, which is the highest youth adoption in Europe. The MAIGOV portal digital assistant has processed over 4.4 million citizen queries, and the DEOS unit has targeted 194,000 AI tax audits by for 2026 with the help of LLM integration. But then on the right, however, we see a very lethargic private sector lag, where the AI integration is only at 9.8%, the fourth lowest, which is the fourth lowest in the EU. This create a dangerous shadow AI risk where employees autonomously use unregulated consumer AI for enterprise tax without any formal or corporate infrastructure. So to manage these, firstly, Greece relies on a layered architectural blueprint. It has the supranational umbrella, which is the AIEU Act, which maintains the legislative primacy and designates the Hellenic Data Protection Authority (HDPA) as the lead market surveillance authority. Then the foundational base is our domestic AI law 4961 of 2022, which mandates the algorithmic impact assessments for the public sector and strict labor protection for the private sector, which requires the employers to notify the workers before utilizing AI in any of their tasks. So this is then structurally supported by the foundational laws like the GDPR and the new cybersecurity and generative AI laws, that is Law 5160 of 2024 and Law 5142 of 2024. The next is the institutional governance matrix. So this is a clear matrix. First is the strategic apex, which is the policy formulation stage and is led by a high level advisory committee on AI, which is chaired by the MIT professor Daskalakis, who authored the 2024 blueprint for Greece's AI transformation. Then the execution is handled by the operational core, specifically the Special Secretariat for AI and Data Governance, which was established in 2025. This core is balanced by the first ethical guardrails, which prioritize augmentation over automation and the fundamental rights defenders, including the HDPA and the Greek ombudsman, who actively monitor high risk systems. Okay, then securing digital sovereignty, the compute stack. So, a cornerstone of this framework is securing the digital sovereignty through a robust three-tier compute stack. At the base is the 58.9 euro million Daedalus supercomputer, equipped with over 2,000 NVIDIA superchips, delivering 89 petaflops. Then the middle tier is a 30 million euro Faros AI factory and operational hub for the secure pipelines. At the apex sits the Meltemi Sovereign LLM. This is a 3 million euro open source model, which is trained on 40 billion token corpus of Greek text to prevent linguistic dilution and ensure public sector data never leaves the domestic servers. So, next is the active enforcement and jurisprudential precedents. So this framework is not just theoretical, it has teeth. So in 2022, the HDPA imposed a maximum 20 million euros fine and a total ban on Clearview AI for a unlawful biometric scraping. Then in 2024, they levied 175,000 euros fine against the state itself, the Ministry of Migration, for deploying an AI surveillance without valid impact assessment. So, crucially, the Council of States decision 1206 of 2024 invalidated the black box state, mandating that the government should explicitly explain the mathematical variables used in automated decisions. So, despite these wins, we must diagnose the systemic friction in which we face three major regulatory voids. First, a civil liability deficit, where we are forced to still rely on the 19th century fault-based torts for autonomous algorithmic failures. Then an intellectual property gap, where the anthropocentric copyright law leaves training data legality ambiguous, and a synthetic media gap lacking a standalone penal statuses for malicious deepfakes prior to 2026. Then these are some strategic policy prescription to resolve these voids. These I propose four strategic propositions. First is to resolve the institutional ambiguity. Then modernize the liability and IP law. Third, to bridge the SME divide, and fourth, to mandate the sovereign AI for administration. So finally, if we implement these prescriptions, the 2026 horizon looks very promising. Greece has already achieved a paradigm shift towards proactive algorithmic governance. by activating our supercomputing infrastructure and enforcing pending constitutional amendments that subordinate AI to human dignity. Greece is poised to be a bridge its paradox and secure its role as the ethical AI anchor for Southeastern Europe. Thank you.
Okay, fellow, what is your two finding from your study?
The first can be the critical regulatory voids that the Greek legal system faces very it currently lacks a bespoke civil liability regime for damages caused by the autonomous algorithms, and there is a severe lack of specialized legislation regarding the intellectual property infringements.
All right, thank you for your presentation. Now we'll be moving ahead with the next fellow. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the insightful presentation, Sankhya. Now we move on to the next fellow, Miss Vaishnavi, who has conducted a research on the country Malaysia. All the best and kindly please follow the time limit. Your timer begins now.
Good morning, esteemed members of the panel. I'm Vaishnavi Nair, and today I'll be presenting my research titled Malaysia's Transition to a Sovereign AI Producer, Evaluating the Legal, Policy, and Infrastructure Framework Guiding the National AI Roadmap. So my research, it examines how Malaysia is transforming from a technology consumer into a sovereign AI producer. So the central argument of my research is that Malaysia has adopted an infrastructure first and innovation oriented approach where investment in digital infrastructure, institutional capacity, and policy development precedes comprehensive AI legislation. Uh, So Malaysia's AI journey has evolved over several decades. It began in the year 1996 with the Multimedia Super Corridor, or the MSC Malaysia, which focuses on attracting the foreign direct investments and establishing the country's digital economy. Between the year 2022 and 2024, Malaysia emerged as a strategic regional AI hub, attributing up to 118 million US dollars in AI related foreign direct investments and 114.78 million ringgit in cloud infrastructure investments, particularly through major data center developments in Johor and Selangor. Today, under the Malaysia Digital Economy Blueprint 2030, or the MD 2030 vision, the country's objectives has shifted from consuming foreign technology producers to producing sovereign digital intellectual property. The foundation of this transformation is in the National AI Roadmap 2021-2025, which adopts the quadruple helix model. And this model brings together the government, the industry, academia, and civil society to ensure that AI development is collaborative as well as sustainable. This roadmap focuses on the 6 strategic pillars, that is, the AI governance, research and development, digital infrastructure, talent development, AI adoption, and innovation ecosystems. Together, these pillars act as a coordinated national strategy for responsible AI development. Moving on, to implement this strategy, Malaysia establishes the National AI Office, or the NAIO, in August of 2024 under the Ministry of Digital. Rather than replacing existing regulators, the National AI Office coordinates an AI policy while working alongside with the already existing sector-specific agencies. These include the Bank Negara Malaysia, which regulates algorithmic credit scoring and financial technologies. The Malaysian Communications and Multimedia Commission, that is MCMC, which oversees online content, deepfake mitigation, and recommends algorithms, and the Securities Commissions of Malaysia, which supervises automated investment platforms and algorithmic trading. This co-regulatory architecture ensures that the centralized coordination happens while preserving the sector-specific experiences. Moving on to the three-phase pathway of the statutory framework, Malaysia is following the three-phase regulatory pathway. In the first phase, as you can see, it establishes that there's a technical standard through MYAI standard platforms, which aligns Malaysia with almost 18 international ISO and IEC standards. The second phase moves on and introduces us to the ethical governance through the AI governance and ethical guidelines, or the AIGE, which sets out 7 voluntary principles and human rights oversight models. The final phase, or the third phase, is the litigation, which proposes AI governance bill, which is expected to introduce statutory duties of care, risk-based classification, and legal accountability for AI developers and deployers. Moving on, the infrastructure is another defining feature of the Malaysia's AI strategy. The government has committed 2 billion ringgit towards sovereign AI cloud infrastructure, while the 2.36 billion US dollars YTL Nevada in partnership is deploying advanced Grace Blackwell GPU system, which the Johor Green Data Central Park is being used. However, the increased computing capacity also creates sustainability challenges with projected electricity issues demanding over 5,800 megawatts in a Johor. To address this, Malaysia is integrating renewed energy through a planned 500 megawatt on-site solar panel facility to support long-term AI infrastructure. Now, let us look into the transformation of the statutory baseline. My research also examines Malaysia's transforming statutory baseline from a soft law to a hard law. So recent reforms in the Personal Data Protection Act, or the PDPA, now classify the biometric information as sensitive personal data and requires organizations to appoint data protection officers and extend direct liability to cloud processors. Similarly, in the Cybersecurity Act of 2024, it introduces mandatory incident reporting obligations for the National Critical Information Infrastructure, or the NCII operators. Together with the proposed AI governance bill and these regular reform signals of Malaysia, Malaysia's gradual movement towards a comprehensive statute AI governance moves into a governance framework. Now, despite these achievements, important challenges still remain in the field of AI policy in Malaysia. One significant concern is that there is a central database hub known as a PADU, which integrates demographic, income, and welfare data. Because Section 3, Clause 1 of the Personal Data Protection Act of 2024 exempts the government from the Act's application, the public sector AI system currently operates outside the statutory privacy protections, creating a very important regulatory gap. In addition, Malaysia has currently has approximately 3,000 currently experiencing 3,000 AI professionals, while estimates suggest that there are 30,000 and will be required to support the country's long-term AI goals. Moving on, based on my findings, I can make 3 recommendations for this for Malaysia's AI policies. Firstly, the amendment of Section 3, Clause 1 of the Personal Data Protection Act, so that the government's AI systems are subject to the same privacy and accountability standards as the private sector. Now, secondly, modernizing the Copyright Act of 1987 by introducing statutory text and data mining, or the TDM, exceptions that support AI innovations while protecting creators. And finally, harmonizing the Personal Data Protection Act and the Cybersecurity Act and the forthcoming AI governance bill to create a coherent and interoperable legal framework. So to conclude, Malaysia has adopted a carefully sequenced governance strategy that prioritizes capacity building first, institutional coordination second, and legalization third. By combining sovereign infrastructure investment with targeted legal modernization, Malaysia is positioning itself to become a trustworthy, resilient, and globally competitive AI nation under the MD 2030 vision. So that would be all. Thank you.
Okay, fellow, as you mentioned, Malaysia is also working with the AI professionals. So, does Malaysia has any guideline for the AI professionals?
Yes, sir. So currently, as I've mentioned in my earlier slides, Malaysia is basically an infrastructure first, innovation second approach taking towards AI policy. They do not currently have a particular statute that governs or that regulates the functioning of AI policy or AI officials within the country. That is one of the suggestions that I have, that in the coming years, that is according to MD 2030 vision, with the strong establishment of the AI governance bill, I'm positive that they will be creating statutory mandates for these AI officials as well. Currently, they
Okay,
do not have an AI statute as such.
okay. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Now we'll be moving ahead to the next participant.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Now we move on to the next fellow, Mr. Anam, who has conducted research on the country Tunisia. Participants, please kindly note that you have to follow the time limit, and all the best for your presentation. Anam, your timer begins now.
Sir, good morning, sir. Am I audible?
Yes,
Yes,
Anam,
you are.
you're audible, and sorry for Miss Anam,
Yes,
sorry.
yes. No, it's okay. It's okay. Good morning, everyone. Today I'm presenting my research on Tunisia's AI law, policy, and governance framework with a focus on data science, higher education, and the policy gaps in a country which is still building its legal foundation. Today, I will show how Tunisia has built a strong physical infrastructure, how its universities produce skilled data science graduates, and where the legal gaps still need to be closed. This slide of mine represents that after independence in the year 1956, the state of Tunisia, it kept a tight control over communication to protect its national sovereignty. By 1991, Tunisia was one of the first African countries online commercially. In the year 2001, the Telecom Code and the 2004 law then opened the market and created the Ministry of Communication Technologies. After the 2011 revolution, the very famous Arab Spring Revolution, state censorship was abolished and internet use jumped from 39% to 79% by the year 2023. This is the core contrast that this country represents. This country has strong infrastructure capabilities, but the governance framework is really weak. Tunisia scores 61.4 out of 100 for infrastructure. It is best in North Africa, but only 28.6 on governance. And there is also no formal AI law in the country. As such, Tunisia is ranked 92nd worldwide. Yet, if we look the talent pipeline, the talent here is real because InstaDeep, which was founded in Tunis, it was bought by a Germany-based firm BioNTech in 2023, and Tunbert is a working Tunisian Arabic language model, an AI model. So, how does Tunisia manages its AI without having a formal law? Through soft law. Task Force IA was set up in 2018 to draft the first national strategy, but political instability installed it. Since then, policy is run through a non binding 2021 to 2025 AI roadmap. In February 2026, four ministries signed an agreement aligning this with the wider national digital strategy, which also produced ELM, the Sovereign Compute Platform. Now, this slide represents the main core research theme of mine,
which is data science linked to higher education. Tunisia possesses a highly qualified STEM talent pipeline, uh, graduating approximately 10,000 engineering and STEM students annually. However, this talent is threatened due to extreme youth unemployment, and there is also massive brain drain to countries like Europe, North America, and the Gulf region. The state has responded to this through academic governance under Law Number 2008-19, leading public institutions like Tunis, El Manar, and Sfax, and also a newly established public AI institute in 2024 to 2025. This is also supported by private sector initiatives like the Pristini School and civil society groups like the Tunisian AI Society, which coordinates multi-stakeholder research coalitions. With no AI Act, developers work through four separate laws instead, because the country does not have a proper AI law. So there are four separate laws through which AI Act functions. The 2004 privacy law covers data inputs, which is enforced by the INPDP. The 2022 cybercrime decree criminalizes fake news, meaning a developer can face liability if their model simply hallucinates. The 2023 cybersecurity law created the ANCS, and it also sets cloud hosting rules. And fourth, the civil liability still runs through a 1906 contract code, which was never built for algorithms. The country, even without any full legal framework, Tunisia is already piloting data science in government. Tartib was an initiative which was launched in the year 2025 along with the World Bank. It scores public investment projects automatically. eHuvia, built in collaboration with Estonia, it secures identity checks and mobile payments. And the Pasteur Institute is piloting an outbreak detection. Also, in a research, 72% of the nurses who were surveyed, they said that diagnostic AI would meaningfully ease their workload. There are certain gaps that concern me the most about this country. Firstly, there is no AI Act and no licensing regime. The 2004 privacy law gives citizens no right to challenge automated decisions, and it also punishes private firms while letting public bodies off the hook. Copyright protects only human authors with no exception for text and data mining, which makes training a model like Tunbert legally risky. Labor code also does not say anything about the automated workplace surveillance. There are five recommendations that I have given in my research. First is there should be a risk based AI Act, which should be similar to the European Union's AI Act. An IP reform is needed. We should add a text and data mining exception so projects like Tunburnt have a legal cover. The cybercrime decree must be reformed to protect academic research from accidental liabilities. The regulatory sandbox should be expanded beyond finance to sectors like health and public administration. Closing the double standard, there is a need to close this double standard so that the public agencies also face the same privacy rules as everyone else, like the private sector is facing as of now. In conclusion, I would say is the networks of Tunisia are ready, but its laws are not. Its laws are not. The Brussels effect is already pushing Tunisian firms towards European Union AI Act compliance, and export controls limit access to advanced chips regardless. Over the next 5 years, Tunisia has to move from just encouraging its startups to enforcing real rights-based law, which is the only way to protect the people while letting the data science talent thrive. Thank you.
Okay, participant, what is your two findings throughout your research study?
My two important findings have been that Tunisia has built a very strong physical infrastructure and it also has a genuinely talented data science pipeline through its universities, but its laws have not kept pace. There is no dedicated AI Act, and the country still governs the algorithms through old laws which were never designed for them, like a 2004 privacy law and a 1906 civil code. So the real problem finding is that it's not that the country possesses capability, but its governance really needs to close that gap, which is also my policy recommendation for this country.
Okay, thank you for your presentation.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for the presentation, Anam. Now we move on to the next fellow, Miss Aditi, who has conducted research on the country Turkey. All the best and please kindly follow the time limit. Thank you. Your timer begins now.
I hope I'm audible and visible.
Yes, yes, you are.
Okay, so very good morning, everyone. As we dissect this ecosystem, I want you to keep one thing in mind that Turkey is undergoing a profound structural shift. And over the next few minutes, we will look at how this nation is leveraging legal frameworks, massive compute infrastructure, and aggressive institutional restructuring to safeguard its data and asserts its digital independence. To understand where Turkey to understand where Turkey's AI infrastructure stands in 2026, we need to recognize that it is not an overnight development. It is a culmination of a 60-year state-directed trajectory. Let us look at the timeline. The foundational bedrock was laid in 1963. By back in 1963, with the establishment of TÜBİTAK, the Scientific and Technology Research Council for Turkey. Fast forward to 1993, when Middle East Technical University and TÜBİTAK launched the initial 64 kbps leased line to US NSF net, which catalyzed the nation's digital transition. By 2008, the infrastructure bore massive administrative fruit with the development of e-Devlet. Consequently, the National Tech Initiative, active today, represents a strategic shift. We now come to the fact that this brings us to the operational blueprint, the National Artificial Intelligence Strategy 2021-25, which is backed by a baseline annual budget raising from 5 to 20 million euros. The core objective of this is to secure a global market share for domestic AI application. It attacks this problem through six deliberate pillars. First is structural transformation. Second is human capital. Third is research and development and innovation. Next is international cooperation. Fifth is social or socio-economic adaptation, and the last is data infrastructure. So we now let us look at the most critical pivot point in the recent history, that is 2025 institutional bifurcation that happened. Previously, Turkey policy was decentralized and largely led by Presidential Digital Transformation Office. However, in March 2025, that office was officially abolished. What followed in December 2025 was a sharp split into two authoritative pillars. On the left, we have the public sector AI oversight, commanded by the Cyber Security Presidency (SGB) and the newly established Public AI Directorate. On the right, we have private and industrial AI oversight handed over to a remandated Ministry of Industry and Technology. Now, if I have to explain it in very simple words, let's say the transportation system of the Turkey has been divided into two sectors. One is public and one is private. The public one is taking care of all the government buses and military logistics, trains, etc. Whereas the private sector is taking care of all the commercial shipping, the private cars, etc. We now come to the next slide, which briefly explains that the AI strategy is only as powerful as its data and compute. The slide illustrates how the sovereign engine that Turkey has constructed to fuel its domestic model. On the left, we have the data pipelines, is the public data space which aggregates cross-ministerial administrative data into secure repositories strictly for model training. This feeds into the sectoral specialization. but the data directly flows into the computer backbone, a national infrastructure anchored by the ARF supercomputer, boasting more than 80,000 crore and 312 GPUs. This massive state-owned infrastructure exists only one specific purpose: to ensure sovereign model validation on home soil, dependent on Western cloud providers. We now come to the fact that let us turn the legal architect. In June 2024, the state introduced the draft AI law number 2/2234, which it adopts an anthropocentric definition covering human-like skills and rationalization. But the biggest dilemma is that this law, though introduced, is still stagnant in the parliament. So, since we know that the existing law that was proposed is still stagnant in the parliament, the question is that how does the state enforce order today? The answer is through indirect control. They are governing the void using the existing legislations. The first and the most important is the Data Protection Law number 6698. The next is Internet Law 5651, and the third one is Cyber Security Law. While I was listening to the presentation of the fellow presenters, I recognize that Tunisia also faces a similar problem where it does not have a direct legislation to control the AI policy, AI framework, whereas it is governing the AI ecosystem through indirect laws. Next, we come to Next, we come to the fact that there are some structural catalysts and deficits that is being faced by the country Turkey. This brings us to the frictional point driving the ecosystem. We cannot talk about Turkey AI without looking at the underlying economic realities. First, look at the high skill brain drain that is happening. Accelerated by post 2021 currency shock, forced rapid AI automation as a migration strategy. Current high skill STEM immigration has created a acute senior developer deficit. Secondly, a technological sovereignty. It wants to replicate the highly successful domestic defense R&D model, such as famous UAV platforms. The clone that success is to civilize civilian digital spheres to prevent strategic economic leakage. A similar thing was faced by Tunisia. Also, brain drain is a problem that has been faced by both the countries. Now, this brings me to the end. This brings me to the end of my presentation, uh, we uh, where we are left with the question that how does the horizon look beyond? By 2031, we can project a fully realized, scrutinized digital state defined by three distinct milestones. I would just cover them in a slide. That is sovereign cloud migration. The next could be geopolitical hedging, state directed developmentalization. So, to end my presentation, I would say that Turkey is making it clear that in the age of artificial intelligence, data sovereignty is national sovereignty. Thank you for hearing me out patiently, and I am open to questions and feedback on how I presented.
Okay, fellow, what is your key observation?
So, my key observation regarding the research that I did was that first of all, Turkey for now is prioritizing hardware over law. Like Turkey is prioritizing physical computational power, upgrading the ARF supercomputer to be ranked globally at number 145. But the primary AI data law is still stagnant. And I feel that if they have to bring an AI revolution, the first and the foremost thing that needs to be taken care of is framing a proper law that deals with this problem specifically, because the indirect control cannot solve the problems because those laws have not been designed to solve these problems. The second is that the AI oversight is strictly divided between the cyber presidency SGB for public sector and the Ministry of Industry and Technology for commercial industry. And also the problem that is faced by Turkey, such as the brain drain, it needs to be administered at an early stage so that they can solve the problems better.
Okay, all right. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you so much, sir. Now may I leave the room?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Okay, host, we can move
Thank
to
you
the
so
next.
much. Yes, sir. Thank you so much for the presentation. And now I want to thank you all our fellows for their insightful presentations. Their work reflects months of dedicated research, policy analysis, comparative legal study, and mentorship under the AI Policy Research Fellowship. And I want to inform the participants that please be kindly ready with your presentations. And now we shall now continue with the next set of presentations. I would like to invite the next fellow, Miss Aparna, who has conducted research on the country Japan. All the best, and please kindly follow the time limit. Your timer begins now.
Am I audible?
Yes, Aparna, you're audible.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. Today we are looking at Japan's unique approach to artificial intelligence governance. So, unlike other global frameworks that actually focus heavily on restriction, Japan has deliberately built a promotion oriented hybrid model. So, what's important to understand right from the start is that Japan isn't just trying to police AI, it is actually actively using state power and progressive legislation to fast track its development. So, let's dive into why this strategy exists and how it actually works. So, let's look at the socio-economic imperative for AI integration in Japan. So, basically, to understand Japan's strategy, we have to look at its demographics. So, Japan is facing an unprecedented shrinking and aging population, causing severe labor shortages across healthcare, manufacturing, and public services. So, because of this, Japan doesn't view AI as a threat to human jobs. Instead, under its Society 5.0 vision, AI transformation or AX is seen as a mandatory human centered mechanism to sustain national productivity. So, in short, basically for Japan, adopting AI is a matter of national economic survival. Now, slide 3 discusses about the centralized governance and state-supported infrastructure. So, building on the imperative of an AI of an aging population, Japan has centralized its governance to eliminate bureaucratic silos. So, at the top, basically sits the AI strategy headquarters, chaired directly by the Prime Minister of Japan, and it coordinates key agencies like the METI, that is Japan's Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, the Digital Agency, and the Japan AI Safety Institute. So, to back this up, the state allocated a massive 502.7 billion yen in the 2026 budget. So, this isn't just a policy on paper, it is heavily subsidized, state supported push to expand domestic compute capacity and infrastructure. Now, slide 4 basically discusses the three pillars of Japanese AI law. So, now moving to the legal architecture, Japan's model stands on three distinct pillars. First is the promotional framework anchored by the AI Promotion Act, which relies on a flexible duty to cooperate rather than rigid bans. Second is data protection, where recent amendments restrict automated profiling but allow statistical processing. Now, the third pillar is intellectual property. So, under Article 30 of the Copyright Act of Japan, the country has one of the world's most permissive data mining rules, allowing AI to train on copyrighted data without explicit permission. Now, moving on to slide 5. So, what is fascinating here is Japan's dual track architecture. So, think of it as a funnel upstream during the innovation and training phase, where the environment is highly permissive, featuring massive funding and soft law compliance. However, as we move downstream to commercial deployment and public distribution, the accountability tightens. So, under the Information Distribution Platform Act, large digital intermediaries are strictly obligated to intervene downstream and promptly remove algorithmic harms such as deep fakes or defamation. Now, moving on to slide 6, it discusses about the global context. So, to put this in a global context, look at how Japan compares to the European Union. So, the EU basically uses a precautionary, risk tiered model with binding statutory prohibitions and massive fines of up to 7% of global turnover. Japan, by contrast, rejects these rigid market entry gates. It basically relies on a co regulatory approach using soft law guidelines, legacy tort law, and public name and shame disclosures. So, this basically keeps the ecosystem highly flexible and incredibly friendly to global tech capital. Moving on to slide 7, it discusses the verification loophole and cognitive debt. So, however, this flexibility in Japan actually creates a regulatory void known as the verification loophole. So, because compliance with the AI guidelines for business is entirely voluntary and self assessed, there are no mandatory ex ante technical audits or third party certifications. So while the naming and shaming works well within traditional Japanese corporate culture, it is structurally ill-equipped to deter agile digital startups or bad faith foreign actors. Now, moving on to slide 8, it discusses the legal voids and legacy framework friction. So, first is the citizen impact void. So, citizens currently lack the statutory rights to challenge algorithmic bias or automated decisions, forcing them to reactively rely on standard tort litigation. Second is the intellectual property clash. So the highly permissive R&D safe harbor in fracturing under the massive scale of commercial generative AI, which is basically culminated in the landmark August 2025 lawsuits filed by publishers like Yomiuri Shimbun and Nickel against Perplexity AI for unauthorized data scraping. Now, moving on to slide 9, where we'll discuss about upgrading the architecture by Japan. So, to fix these vulnerabilities, Japan is deploying three critical policy interventions. First, transitioning beyond voluntary best efforts to structured co-regulation by mandating standardized technical reporting for high impact frontier models. Second, the introducing of statutory penalties based on the April 2026 LDP AI subcommittee recommendations, which will levy hard financial penalties on malicious operators who ignore the government reporting request. Third is expediting judicial and statutory IP refinement to clarify Article 30, balancing R&D access with mandatory creator compensation and licensing. Now, to conclude, we'll look at the path to 2028. So, finally, this timeline maps Japan's regulatory evolution. So, we are currently in the 2026 friction and calibration phase, awaiting key technical definitions and judicial rulings. So by 2028, Japan will actually mature into a fully structured co-regulation heightened by the enforcement of the 2026 APPI amendments, which introduce monetary surcharges for economically motivated breaches. Ultimately, to conclude, I would like to say that Japan's core policy will remain innovation first, but the era of penalty-free compliance is ending, paving the way for a risk balanced, globally interoperable digital economy. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, fellow, have you mentioned or have you researched about the Japan's G7 Hiroshima project?
Indeed, sir. But I was unfortunately not able to include it in the presentation due to the strict time limit.
Okay, what you know about Japan's Hiroshima project?
Okay, sir. So, Japan's Hiroshima process is actually a landmark process. It was actually launched during the G7 summit in Hiroshima in 2023. It was actually initiated by the G7 countries. So, it is basically a framework which promotes safe and secure and trustworthy AI, and it basically introduces guiding principles for AIs and a code of conduct for AI developers, and it basically focuses on transparency, accountability, and risk management. So, why this matters in this context is that it shows Japan's leadership in the global AI governance, and it actually aligns with Japan's soft law approach, as I have discussed before in my presentation, and it also includes a promotion oriented model. So,
All right, thank you for your presentation.
thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Now we move on to the next fellow. Just give me a second. Now we move on to the next fellow, uh, Sachin Kumar Gupta, who has conducted the research on the country Italy. Sachin, all the best for the presentation. Now your timer begins.
Hello. Uh, am I audible?
Yes, Sachin, you're audible.
Oh, Uh, Good morning, everyone. Today I am presenting the analysis of the artificial intelligence law policy governance framework of the Italy with the specific focus of the highly proactive approach to the data production enforcement. So, to the underlying Italy AI trajectory, we look at the socio-economic drivers. What are these drivers? So, Italy is facing the severe economic contraction, and that was the working age population is projected to decline by the 30% by 2050. Coupled with the historical stagnated productivity, Italy views AI not just an innovation but a micro economic necessity was there. So, to support this, the state has made a massive investment in the sovereign high performance computing anchored by Leonardo and IT for LIA. Uh, now, uh, we look at the uh, regulatory aspects of Italy. So, Italy regulatory philosophy is decidedly right-based and anthropocentric. So, legally, AI is strictly auxiliary tool means to support or not supplement human intellectual and agency. Governance is highly decentralized across multiple agencies. These are the agencies which is has Italy which had decentralized laws, and the laws are the main law which the Italy has is law 132 2025, which is called the Italy AI's law, commonly known as Italy AI's laws. And these laws not notably operationalized implementing through decrees in June 2026, and these decrees also introduce a criminal offense called Article 437 and biases penetrating the failure to adopt the mandatory safety measures in highly risk AI systems, shifting AI safety to the realm of the corporate and boardroom liabilities. What are my key findings in this? My key finding is yes. My key finding is this that Italy has a aggressively use of the legacy framework, specifically the GDPR to police AI. But Italy Data Protection Authority, the Grante, has established itself a Europe most interventionist regulator. It levied a fine on a Food Indigo Glover to 2.6 million fine. It has a Clearview AI fine of 20 million, and the Luca in fine of 5 million also. So as a result, the Italy regulators is now forced to strategically pivot their enforcement away from the foreign multinational and focusing instead on localized domestic AI deployment where the authorities is undisputed. What are the major challenges and the legal gaps there? So major challenges there is that despite the Italy has a robust legal framework, there was a significant legal void was there, and the most critical is what a scholar called is partially automated processing gap, and that gap is created because of the fragmented institution, and the transparency mandate in its 2025 AI law rely on the legacy 1997 labor laws. So what are my major policy recommendation in this? My major policy recommendation is this: bridging the labor gap. There was a huge labor gap was there in the Italy legislations, and update the corporate compliance there, because there was a huge gap in this corporate compliance, because enterprise must independently integrate algorithmic risk assessment to the compliance model to mitigate the exposure of the new civil presumption of the causation and the criminal liabilities introduced in 1986. And and third is prioritize human capital, because not everything can be replaced by the AI, but we can have this have a human and have a human intervention on this, because Italy has a national AI strategy 2027, which must pivot, which tells that it must pivot for nearly procuring hardware to aggressively intensivize talent retention to secure the digital sovereignty. So, in conclusion, what I tell is Italy has the most vital European test cases. The jurisdiction demonstrate both the strength and the of the strict right-based algorithmic framework and the jurisdictional limit. But navigating this structural void over the next 5 years will determine if Italy can successfully balance the economic modernization with the prevention of the human dignity. Thank you for that.
Okay, fellow, what is your key observations?
My key observation is Italy has has a very like codified AI's governance framework, but there was a huge legal void there, and that Italy has to fix it for implementing the AI's laws. Uh, if they fix it in an early stage, I think the adoption of the AIs in Italy is quite easy.
Okay, what are the codified laws the Italy has as per you?
Codified laws is 132. There was a codified laws. Italy has also a super nation like Europe. Main Europe. Europe is mostly the deciding which is there. So Europe has GDPR was there. General data, I think regulation authorities was there. So and Italy has like mentioned in the presentation. This yeah. Uh, Article 437 and Decree 231 2001.
All right, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you so much for the presentation, Sachin. Now we move on to the next fellow, Mr. Nikunj Agarwal, who has conducted research on the country Ecuador. All the best for the presentation, and please kindly follow the timer. Thank you.
Am I audible?
Yes, Nikunj, you're audible.
Okay. So, good morning to the panel. I am Nikunj Agarwal, and my presentation focuses on Ecuador. More specifically, I examine how Ecuador is developing cross-sector data policies to tackle algorithmic bias and why this makes Ecuador an important case study in the contemporary AI governance. So, artificial intelligence may be global, but algorithmic bias is always local. To understand Ecuador's AI governance model, we first need to understand the structural reality of the its AI ecosystem. So Ecuador is an upper middle economy, income economy, which is moving towards a rapid AI adoption because driven by security concerns and digital modernization. At the same time, it has 83.7% internet penetration with more than 15.2 million users, but computer ownership remains stagnant at around 32.7%, which creates serious device access inequality. Ecuador is also heavily dependent on imported AI infrastructure like AWS, Google Cloud, and etc. While national R&D investment remains only 0.44% of the GDP. So Ecuador's AI future is growing, but it's growing on an unequal and externally dependent foundation. So this leads directly to the legal architecture that Ecuador has built in a fastly changing world. So at the base is its constitution, its 2008 constitution, particularly articles like 66, clause 19 and 92, which recognize personal data protection as a fundamental rights. And it is also a constitutional framework to protect it. On that base, Ecuador enacted the LOPDP Act in 2021, whose Article 20 creates an express right against automated decision making. Then in 2026, the SPDP AI regulation has become the first binding regulation specifically governing AI data processing. And there are internal security acts like LOI, which was enacted in 2025, which also has governance in the AI, in the security. What is striking is that Ecuador did not begin with an AI innovation first, it began with constitutional rights. But law alone is not enough. Institutions determine whether those legal commitments actually work. Uh, so, So what is the root cause of the problem at the first place? So there are two major root cause of this algorithmic bias. The first root cause is local data poverty, meaning that indigenous communities, different rural population and different tribal groups and different communities, the indigenous community of Ecuador are structurally underrepresented in the digital data sets because of access gaps and information economies. The second root cause is imported compute dependency, because Ecuador relies on foundational models which are trained on the data available from the global north datasets that often lack Ecuadorian linguistic. Basically, the data that the AI they import is being trained on is not there if is not of Ecuador's. The data is not of Ecuador. It's of the global north, which can say the AI is being trained on. So when these two conditions combine, they produce bias amplification in areas such as credit scoring, policing, and welfare. So the core insight is that post hoc algorithmic audits cannot fully fix bias. This is already baked in the training data of the AI which they are using. So if data begins with exclusion, the algorithm ends with discrimination. So this brings us to the first major finding of the research report. So the rights protective framework of the LOPDP and the SPDP prioritize privacy, due process, and algorithmic transparency, and it empowers individual to uh, contest automated decisions. On the other hand, the state security framework under the LOI 2025 was driven by the 2024 Internal Armed Conflict Declaration and authorized expansive warrantless data access AI surveillance. In the middle, the Constitutional Court acts as the constitutional check. And in August 2025, it provisionally suspended 12 articles of LOI, thereby constraining the potential AI governance overreach. So, this is not just a legal conflict between two statutes, it is a conflict between two versions of the state, two visions of the state, one right based and other security driven. So the second key finding focuses on how Ecuador has tried to operationalize protection through secondary regulation. The 2026 SPDP AI regulation, which the report identifies as the first binding AI data processing regulation in Latin America, which with extraterritorial scope also. It organizes obligations around four factors: the developer, who must conduct data protection impact assessments; the deployer, who must ensure algorithmic audibility calibrated to the risk; the distributor, who must register AI processing activities; and the implementer, who must provide transparency notices to users. Above all, the report Above all, the research identifies that the ultimate safeguard as LOPDP Article 20, which protects the data subject against purely automated decisions that produce legal and significant effects. In other words, Ecuador moves more from general principles to assignable obligations. However, even a strong framework on paper can face serious practical limitations. So, there exist four major challenges in the policy which is currently being there. So, the first is the implementation gap. With only 45.9% average LOPDP compliance rate across 40 major public and private entities. Second, there's a governance fragmentation because of the lack of a unified sandbox or cross-agency coordination creates accountability voids. Third, there are IP and text and data mining legal voids which need to be fixed. And fourth, enforcement capacity remains limited, with the SPDP conducting only 10 audits of 15 entities in 2025, which is far too little for economy wide algorithmic suspension. So the blueprint is sophisticated, but the bridge to implementation is still incomplete. Uh, so this finally, it can be said that Ecuador has a rapidly assembled a world-class GDIPR aligned AI regulatory architecture, and that it is a significant formal legal achievement for a country for Ecuador. But uh, But the real path forward lies in the distributed institutional capacity, mandatory data representatives, and consistent political will. Ultimately, the standard of the success is substantive equality, whether a marginalized citizen can access the timely and effective remedies against algorithmic discrimination. So, the real measure of AI governance is not whether a country can regulate technology on paper, but whether ordinary people can experience justice through it. So, that's it for my presentation today. Thank you to the panel, and I would like some questions and feedback on my presentation.
Okay, fellow, what is your core understanding and observation throughout your research on Ecuador?
So my core understanding will be that Ecuador is very robust in implementing new policies for AI regulation, data privacy. Since, however, a full-fledged AI regulation still not exist in the country. It is being deliberated and debated among the country as of now. But it has focused on the individual rights. That is one of the very good thing I found in the Ecuador's policy, that it is focused on an individual's rights, constitutional rights, which is currently not being seen in other countries or in other regulations. It's mostly on the provider side. But Ecuador focuses and prioritize the individual citizens' rights, which is something I found very unique about Ecuador's policy.
All right, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Now we move on to the next fellow, Ms. Deepika, who has conducted research on the country Bangladesh. All the best and kindly follow the timer. Your timer begins now.
Fellow, you are not visible and audible. Okay, we can move ahead with the next fellow
Sure,
host.
sir. Now we move on to the next fellow, Arpita Das, who has conducted research on the country Pakistan. You can move on with your presentation.
Yes, fellow, you are not visible. No, they might be facing some network issue.
Okay,
Okay,
so shall I move on to the next fellow?
yes, move on to the next.
Okay. Um, I would like to invite the next fellow, Nilanko Chattopadhyaya, who has conducted research on the country Australia.
Am I audible?
Yes, yes, start with your
Yes, you are
presentation, fellow.
audible.
So, good morning, everyone. So, my topic, as you can see in the screen, beyond voluntary principles, evaluating Australia's regulatory approach to safe and responsible artificial intelligence. So, before starting the presentation, I will just like to describe a story. So, me and my friend, like 2 weeks ago, was discussing about the uh, policy of Australia. So he suddenly asked that, what do you think about the AI policies or AI legislation of Australia? So I said, luckily I was also conducting this research. So I said, of course, Australia have different, regulations, rules, or advices which is given by government, but they all are actually soft laws. So there is no binding as such rule, or a complete legislation is there. So he said, if there is no complete legislation, then where is the trust? Where is the accountability? So that leads to a problem. Now, another thing is, one of the essential thing which he asked, that if any problem arose with respect to AI, then whom to approach, whom to go. So I said there are different institutions which we will see here soon. So different institutions provide different resolves different problems as when it comes to AI. they have sector specific laws when it comes to AI. So he said that it is creating a confusion, like whom to approach, how to approach. So essentially, my paper proposed Australia should develop a complete legislation with respect to AI, like use AI Act 2024, which is not there. Now this creates a hindrance and also a problem and creates a confusion among the masses. So going for the next slide. Okay, I can't see the slide exactly, but it's all right. So here I have described the governance structure of the like Australia. What are the governance structure framework? Here you can see that first is it's providing human-centered AI ethical principles. In 2021, Australia released this. So this essentially deals with the facts like there are 8 principles which has been adopted from also OECD, we can say. So these principles provides protection of privacy, then ensuring accountability, then transparency, human in loop, etc. Then going to next one, which is Australia's action plan in 2021, uh, where simply it is like Australia wants more businesses, universities, researchers to use AI so that their country should become global leader in AI or innovation. Then third is safe and responsible AI framework, where the Australia is trying to shift from voluntary guidelines or ethical principles to a mandate rules that every sectors needs to be followed. So then we move to voluntary AI safeguard, which is we can see that it can be considered to be a soft law. It is voluntary in nature, like companies can adopt or they choose not to adopt it. But also this voluntary AI safety safeguard basically provides how to identify risk, how to minimize risk, then testing of large language models, then training of large language models, etc. Then we have other, I have also mentioned other 3 responsible AI in government policy, where government agents needs to look how AI should be deployed, how they should be used, what are the ethical principles, how people can trust, like there should be accountability and transparency, etc. Then moving to the next slide, which is like major laws and regulations. So first of all, we can see that Privacy Act of 1988, which essentially deals with protection of personal data of Australian citizens. And then amendment in 2024 came, which also provided provisions when it comes to AI. Like when AI collects, of course, we all know that when AI is like how it is being used. When AI is used, it is used for training purposes, and for that purpose we need, like AI deployers need personal data, then different varieties of data. So this needs to be protected, and this act also aims to protect that. Then Online Safety Act 2021, which essentially deals with deep fake issues. Then Copyright Act, like who is the owner of the materials, of the copyrighted materials when used in AI training purposes. Then Australia have voluntary AI safety standard 2024, which is again voluntary in nature. Then there is proposed mandatory AI guardrails, which is like Australia now is now shifting to that strict rules and structures that that certain companies have to follow it. There is they also have followed this high risk approach or low risk approach. Stringent measures will be imposed, etc. Then what are the different institutions, as like me and my friend were discussing, like what are whom to complain, whom to approach when certain things are done or it is breached. Then we can see, first of all, the first and foremost is Department of Industry, Science and Resources, which is main government department responsible for Australia's AI policy. So it creates Australia's AI policy, how it would be regulated. It leads government project to ensure that AI is developed and used in a structured manner. Then there is Office of AI, which essentially puts AI, the concept of AI, into practice and how it will be done. Like the implementation part is done by this AI office. Then we have a National AI Center, which helps Australia becomes a leader for innovation, because as we know, along with ethics, we also need the innovation thing. And of course, Australia focuses more on innovation rather than laws. I'm saying this just because of the fact that they do not have strict or mandate rules. So That is the thing. And other institutions you can already see in the screen. Then then coming to next slide, which is like key findings, or I will just deal with the challenges. What are the challenges they have faced, or like facing Australia is facing? So first and foremost is fragmented approach. Different sectors have different formulated structure of AI. Then there is privacy and data protection issue. If something happens, then what will be done? How will be done with regret? If any breach or data leaks happen, then going to biasness and fairness and transparency, because the main problem remains as they do not have strict or stringent laws. Then coming to public trust and accountability, which is one of the essential thing, because public or people believe in law, but Australia have guidelines, rules, but still not enforceable or operationalized law. And at last, my recommendations and conclusion will be, first and foremost, this paper is based on the fact that Australia needs to create, a legislation, comprehensive legislation, which will deal with different sectors. It will also provide high risk, low risk, medium risk, just like use AI Act. It should also provide provisions with respect to regulatory sandboxes, like what is the time period of that, when it be released. It should also provide provision with respect to copyright thing, ownership thing, and lastly, it should also give certain rules regarding black box AI, so that transparency should always be there. So this is it. Thank you, and if there is any question, please let me know.
Okay, fellow, what is your two findings from your research study of Australia?
Okay. So, sir, first of all, I would say that Australia has focused more on innovation, and that is good. That is actually very good. But the thing is, innovation also protected by ethical principles, which Australia has. But the problem still remains that they do not have a binding or enforceable law. So voluntary guidelines, I think, do not solve the problem of this. And uh, second, I would say Australia has different sectors. Different sectors who is governing with AI law, like finance, whether it is agriculture, whether it is any other sector. Now this is creating a problem. So if they conclude a law, a specific law which deals with everything, then eventually, sir, I think everything will be sufficed. So that's it, sir.
All right, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Now we move on to the next fellow, Shawik Nath, who has conducted research on the country Ethiopia. All the best and kindly do follow the time limit. Your timer begins now.
Uh, a very good morning to all. Ethiopia is Africa's second most populous country with over 120 million people
Nath, where is your
in
presentation?
recent years. So, so I'm not able to find the sharing option here.
Okay,
Sorry,
you
sir.
can continue. You can continue your presentation without the PPT, but the PPT has to be sent to the secretariat immediately after your
Sure,
presentation.
sure, sir. Sure. In recent years, the government has identified AI as an as strategy tool. Government has for accelerating digital transformation. for accelerating digital transformation, improving public services, and enhancing agriculture and medical care sector, for promoting economic growth. This vision is reflected in the Digital Ethiopia 2025, is Digital Ethiopia Vision 2030, and National Artificial Intelligence Policy 2024, all aiming to build a digital sovereign and AI enabled nation that is sovereign AI for Ethiopia. Ethiopia does not yet have any dedicated AI act. Instead, it follows a hybrid governance systems. The backbone of the nation's AI strategy is the National Artificial Intelligence Policies of 2024, standing on four pillars, that is ethics, data governance, human capital, and digital infrastructure. The Ethiopia Artificial Intelligence Institute, There is the EAII, stands at the center of this ecosystem. The EAII acts as a primary body for domestic AI research, technological evaluation, and policy advisory. As per the hybrid governance model, it promotes risk based, human in the loop strategy, combining soft law policies with the existing legislation, with the aim of aligning itself with the global and continental policies such as the EU GDPR, serving as the direct model for Ethiopia's personal data protection proclamation number 132 oblique 1321 oblique 2024, African Union Protection Continental AI Strategy 2024, UNICEF AI Strategy 2025 till 2030, OECD's is AI principles and UNESCO's guidelines. In the absence of dedicated and comprehensive AI Act, Ethiopia relies on the existing statutes such as the Personal Data Protection Proclamation Act number so and so, number 1321 oblique 2024, Computer Crime Proclamation number 958 oblique 2016, and Copyright and Neighboring Right Act number 410 oblique 2004, which is severely outdated, leaving a complete legal void regarding AI generated work and IP protection. My research reveals five findings. Ethiopia follows a Ethiopia follows a highly centralized, state-led AI governance model with AEII playing at a dominant core. AI remains policy driven. AI remains a policy driven rather than law driven. The personal data protection program proclamation serves as a primary legislation safeguard for AI. And fourthly, challenges due to infrastructure limitations, shortage of AI professionals, dependency of on foreign technology creates a glaring sovereignty gap. Since the long-term goal is achieving true digital sovereignty, the actual reality is an acute dependence on foreign technologies. And lastly, generative AI being deployed without proper safety with proper safety filters exposing minors to algorithmic biasness, deepfakes, and psychological dependency risk. The recommendation that I have put forward for this research is that Ethiopia needs to enact a binding AI Act, the spin-off of Independent Oversight Board, away from the EAII to handle auditing and compliance, mandating algorithmic impact assessments, and operationalize child-centric guardrails. In conclusion, Ethiopia laid down an incredible strong institutional foundation and highly ambiguous roadmap for socio-economic transformation. However, a state cannot successfully govern the frontier of technology via soft policy alone. To tackle the challenges, Ethiopia must transition from policy-driven framework to an enforceable right-based legal framework. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, fellow. We don't have any question for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Now we move on to the next fellow, Nehal Gangwal, who has conducted research on the country Uzbekistan. All the best for your presentation. Kindly follow the time limit. Your timer begins now.
Hello, am I audible and my presentation is visible?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Good morning to the panelists. I will be presenting on Uzbekistan's sovereign AI strategy, an examination of how the state is expanding algorithmic integration into public registers. Over the next 5 minutes, I will take the countries through the digital transition, its government's architecture, and its legal framework. Moving towards the transition to a sovereign digital hub, Uzbekistan's journey towards a sovereign digital hub has unfolded in four distinct phases. It began with the post Soviet legacy, a state monopolized, fragmented telecom system that left the country trailing the rest of Central Asia. This gave way to the Digital Uzbekistan 2030 mandate, a sweeping state commitment to digitize 70% of all the public administration services in the face of rapid demographic expansion. That in turn fed into what we call the big data imperative, an aggressive state effort to integrate previously fragmented public registers into a unified e governance portal, such as the Unified Electronic Registers and MyID. Then, if we look at the role of the state in the particular country, is that the state has positioned itself as a centric entity, and it is simultaneously an architect, funder, and a regulator of its own technological ecosystem. On the funding side, a $50 million interest-free state loan through the Fund for Reconstruction and Development has been used to operationalize domestic GPU supercomputer clusters, allowing the country to bypass costly foreign cloud reliance. On the development side, the state has centralized the creation of sovereign technology assets, most notably the National AI Language Model, which operates exclusively on the localized TAS-X network, and regulatory enforcement is distributed across three bodies: the Ministry of Digital Technologies, which leads strategy execution; the Personalization Agency, which enforces data protection and localization mandates; and the Uzmok-Zarat, which is the agency that is regulating everything. Moving towards the statutory readiness and the data sovereignty. This institutional structure is underpinned by the two major laws. First one is the law ZRU 1115, which entered into force in January 2026 and which for the first time gave the definition of artificial intelligence, meaning any AI output affecting human rights or dignity requires mandatory human verification. This also allowed the human in loop mandate that no decision can be exclusively taken by an AI. There has to be a confirmation and an involvement of a human before any kind of verification related to any law that is affecting the human rights in any manner. Moving towards the soft laws, because it's not just the hard laws that matter but also the soft laws, so the compliance, ethics, and the punitive network. Alongside these laws cites an ethical and punitive framework. Order number 3787, entering into force in June 2026, established ethical guardrails around transparency, fairness, and non-discrimination, and shifted the burden of proof onto developers to proactively demonstrate that their training methodologies are free of bias. Backing this up are severe punitive sanctions: administrative liability, fines of 50 to 100 base calculation units for unlawful AI data processing, mandatory confiscation of the physical hardware and GPU clusters involved in the offense. Moving towards the sovereign AI capabilities and the ecosystemic integration. Our research surfaced four key findings on how these capabilities are actually being deployed. First is the sovereign large language models. The National AI Language Model trains exclusively on state curated datasets to preserve linguistic and digital autonomy. Second is the biometric infrastructure. The PalmPay and the Face ID are now developed widely and is present widely everywhere. Third is the healthcare and automation. Clinical machine learning tools, particularly for the CT scan and mammography screening, are being used to bridge the severe shortage of specialized radiologists in rural provinces. And fourth is the dual use applications, the digitalization of military conscription through other systems. Moving towards the structural voids in AI governance, there are still many kind of voids. First is there is an absence of risk tiered classification that is present in EU GDPR. Second is there is an independence deficit, a total absence of independent oversight commissions or specialized administrative tribunals to adjudicate algorithmic harm such as welfare proliferation. Third is that what we term as the illusion of human in the loop, because the sheer scale of public sector workloads under the 70% digitization mandates risk turning mandatory human review into a rubber stamp exercise, which is nullifying and which is just for the sake of saying it. Moving towards the intellect property and labor vulnerabilities, there are two further vulnerabilities emerged in our analysis. First is that Uzbekistan's strict human-centric copyright laws denies protection to autonomous AI-generated outputs, and there are no statutory exemptions for text and data mining. And both of these vulnerabilities, and also there is no statutory limit on automated disciplinary profiling or keystroke logging. Both of these they converge on a single regulatory void, that is the failure to publish an official schedule of adequate data protection. Moving towards the end of the conclusion, based on these findings, we recommend three concrete reforms. First is the implemented risk tier taxonomy like the EU GDPR. Second is the established formal regulatory sandboxes through a comprehensive Sandbox Act. And third is the modernized IP and civil liability by introducing statutory safe harbors for text and data mining, protecting domestic developers while creating specialized civil remedy frameworks for citizens harmed by automated administrative errors. To finally conclude, I would like to say that Uzbekistan stands as a landmark regional pioneer, having engineered to the most advanced state-led algorithmic infrastructure in Central Asia and ascended rapidly on a global AI readiness index, and it is on the 62nd number. Its protection, however, remains robust but blunt. Instruments like the laws that are present here, they are there, but there are many voids in which has to be filled. Final outlook is that to sustain its macroeconomic momentum beyond 2030, the state must transition beyond top-down convenience and establish genuine, independent, procedural due process for its citizens. Thank you, and I would be happy to take any questions if there are any.
Okay, fellow, what are your key three observations of the Uzbekistan's law?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
My key observations are that Uzbekistan was a very socialist model because it was in a part of Soviet Union. So it was very state centric. But there must be a balance between the state and the private sector to create a platform which is not just centric towards the state, because the mandate that is presently given is that 70% of the public machineries has to be transgressed with AI till 2030. There is no involvement of private. Secondly is that the citizens, they are not included in any of these things because it is just government centric. Because what has been happening is that the law is not made citizen centric because the focus is only on towards the public services that are there. So there must be a balance between private sector and the government, then only a suitable equitable platform can be created for everybody. That is my key observation.
Okay, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Now we move on to the next fellow, Amit Rana, who has conducted research on the country Bolivia. All the best for your presentation and kindly follow the time limit. Your timer begins now.
Thank you for your time. Today we are examining a strategic briefing on the artificial intelligence law, policy, and governance framework of the plurinational state of Bolivia. The core premise of Bolivia's approach is both ambitious and protective, regulating artificial intelligence to safeguard constitutional rights and cultural heritage prior to make market saturations. In doing so, Bolivia presents a divergent paradigm for digital sovereignty. While the global north relies on a market driven model dominated by proprietary language models and post market soft laws, the Bolivian paradigm is strictly state directed. It focuses on pragmatic applied AI, mandates sovereign data localizations, and relies on preemptive right centric statutory deadlines, often referred to as hard law. This is fundamentally built upon Law Number 164 from 2011, which officially recognizes telecommunication and digital infrastructure as a fundamental human right. Coming to the next slide, which is about the governance architecture and cultural inclusion. To manage this digital transformation, the state employs a centralized architect built on two distinct pillars, the left pillar and the right pillar. The left pillar, that is agentic, it acts as the strategy and deployment arm, tasked with the drafting national AI strategy within a strict 180 days mandate. The right pillar, that is ARIA, it represents the independent regulatory authority, empowered to conduct unannounced algorithmic audits and levy severe financial units. Crucially, this architecture goes beyond technical deployment. It explicitly codes cultural inclusions and environmental ethics into its foundation. The state mandates linguistic sovereignty, by rejecting Western models that marginalize indigenous populations, requiring AI interfaces to process official languages like Aymara and Guarani. It also protects traditional knowledge from extractive data mining and prioritizes energy efficient algorithms to monitor natural resources. Aligning to technology with the indigenous philosophy of weaver bill or living will. Coming to the next slide, the slide fifth and sixth mention about the regulatory shield and jurisprudential web. So, moving to the legislative framework, Bolivia enforces a regulatory shield defined by Proyecto de Ley number 178 2024 to 25. The bill demands strict compliance, establishing uncompromising civil liability for developers and asserting extraterritorial reach over foreign tech entities, regardless of where the servers are located. Below the line, the state enforces absolute prohibitions against the deployment of subliminal manipulation intent to bypass human reasoning. Algorithmic social scoring systems operated by public authorities, and remote biometric surveillance and mass categorization without explicit, highly scrutinized judicial authorization. These are the absolute prohibitions against the factors. While the bill progresses, Bolivia governs AI via jurisprudential web of legacy framework. This includes utilizing existing labor laws to strike down opaque algorithmic dismissals, leveraging copyright codes to protect human ingenuity, and utilizing Article 130 of the 2009 Constitution of Combat, that was automated data scraping through constitutional privacy rights. Coming to my seventh and eighth slide, that is pragmatic deployment and geopolitical stance. So, in this public sphere, Bolivia applies AI in a systematic way. This includes utilizing machine learning to detect transactional anomalies and reduce tax evasions, and deploying predictive analytics for social welfare subsidies. Notably, welfare algorithms are strictly paired with human in the loop architecture to ensure citizens retain their constitutional rights to administrative appeal. And also, Bolivia is establishing itself as a voice for digital decolonization. The global AI arm race not merely as collaborative science, but as a mechanism for neo-colonial data extraction. Due to the time restraint, coming to the 11th slide, despite this world class legislative ambition, Bolivia faces an ambition versus capacity paradox. Their regulatory forces has vulnerabilities, namely a current vacuum in the comprehensive personal data, privacy law, a structured conflict of interest where Agitic is both the primary deployer and regulatory auditor, and has a severe deficit of specialized legal technologists. To bridge the gap and move forward toward enforcement, Bolivia has outlined a four-step blueprint: enact a comprehensive data privacy law, launch ARI independently, invest heavily in human capital, and expand regulatory sandboxes. Thank you. That was from my side.
Okay, fellow, what are your key three findings from your research study of Bolivia?
Sir, my major key findings after conducting research on this one was state-directed frameworks. So the research establishes that the Bolivia rejects the market-driven soft law approach to the global north in the favor of preemptive right-centric hard law. The second one was constitutional foundation. This framework is grounded that under law number 164, and that was in 2011, which legally treats telecommunication and digital infrastructure. Apart from that, the third one is dual pillar governance. As I already mentioned in my PPT, the left pillar approach and the right pillar. So that was one of the major findings. And then absolute prohibitions, which was given under Proyecto de Ley number 178, 2024 and 25, which redlines and ban subliminal human manipulations.
Okay, like as you stated, the rule of absolute prohibition. So does it reduces the AI misuse and the AI ethical misuses?
Sir, if we refer to the rule of absolute prohibition, the major fundamental over here was regarding the anti-racist and human reasonings. So, in my context, what I have mentioned about this one is that specifically that is given under Proacto Lay number 178. It stop about the deployment of any algorithmic systems and techniques that is going to bypass human reasoning. Apart from that, the other one is banning the creation and operation of algorithmic social scoring systems. Uh, Before this presentation, I referred to black boxes, in which that was a failed system that USA was following. So, since Bolivia is involved into forming a new route for AI, and uh, the detaching themselves from the Western culture. So this is the another ban, that is the creation and operation of algorithmic social scoring systems or citizen trust network by public authorities. And the third one is unlawful biometrics, the use of remote biometric surveillance and mass categorization systems without explicit or highly scrutinized specific judicial authorization. So this is the prohibition part.
All right. Thank you for your presentation.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Now we move on to the next fellow, Ms. Arpita Rana, who has conducted research on the country Pakistan. All the best, Arpita, and kindly follow the time limit. Your timer begins now.
Am I
Arpita,
audible?
you're audible, yeah. But you're not visible.
Just a second.
Okay.
Is it fine now?
Yes, you're visible.
Good morning, esteemed panelists. Today, I'm presenting my research titled Sovereignty, Securitization, and Statutory Voids. This study provides a critical analysis of Islamic Republic of Pakistan as well as currently navigating a sharp structural dichotomy. What that is, balancing an aggressive top-down developmental drive to become a sovereign AI actor against a backdrop of deep statutory voids and a highly securitized approach to digital space. Let us begin by looking at the historical trajectory that brought us to this pivotal moment. If we look at the timeline on this slide, we will see that Pakistan's digital legal journey began with the ETO, Electronic Transactions Ordinance of 2002, which established basic functional equivalence for digital documents. Over the next 2 decades, the PECA Act was released in 2016. Today, the ecosystem is anchored by the NCAI, National Center of AI, a consortium of 9 specialized labs across public university. However, most significant of 2025, which aims to transition the country into a unified digital society. This new statutory cornerstone supports the ambitious strategic vision outlined in the nation's soft law framework. Pakistan's strategic posture is defined by the National AI Policy 2025 and the Islamabad AI Declaration 2026. These documents move the state from a passive consumer to an active producer with a planned $1 billion investment by 2030 to build sovereign AI infrastructure. Central to this is the NAIF, National AI Fund, which receives a non discretionary or mandatory 30% allocation from the Ignite ICT R&D Fund to finance 1,000 indigenous AI products. The goal is clear, right? It is to insulate critical infrastructure through localized compute and Urdu based LLMs. While these policies are quite progressive, they must be viewed alongside the binding laws that govern the digital space. This comparison table highlights the friction between development and regulation. The Digital Nation Pakistan Act of 2025 establishes the PDA, to manage infrastructure. The PECA Amendment Act of 2025 has introduced a highly punitive regime. Specifically, the Section 26A now criminalizes the dissemination of false, fake, and automated information with up to 3 years of imprisonment. Crucially, we can see that in the pending column, the Personal Data Protection Bill has remained stalled since 2023. What does this mean? The entire digital architecture is being built in a statutory vacuum regarding privacy rights. This brings us to our core finding, the structural dichotomy that I mentioned earlier. We found a profound imbalance. On one hand, we see aggressive drive for centralized digital public infrastructure with NADRA collecting massive biometric data sets. On the other hand, there is an absolute statutory void regarding personal data rights. This creates a reality where the state's capacity to monitor and regulate data has grown exponentially, but the citizens' statutory recourse to enforce data minimization or prevent surveillance remains completely uncodified. It is a system built on executive dominated regimes that lack foundational constitutional checks and balances. Beyond these constitutional concerns, there are three critical gaps. First, a physical infrastructure deficit, as Pakistan lacks domestic HPC and GPU arrays for forcing domestic startups and freelancers to host data on foreign clouds. Second, a human capital paradox. While the country produces 75,000 IT graduates annually, fewer than 10% possess applied AI skills, leading to severe brain drain. Finally, the intellectual property or IP void. Current laws dating back to 1962 and 2000s are strictly human centric. They do not recognize AI as an author or inventor. What does this mean? This discourages domestic R&D investment, which because companies cannot secure patents for AI derived assets. To address these gaps, the state has proposed a new ethical framework focused on equity. The National Data Doctrine, introduced in 2026, represents a significant paradigm shift. It declares the government data is or the public data is a strategic national asset held in trust for the citizens. Under this doctrine, public bodies are not designated as guardians but owners, establishing a fiduciary duty to protect citizens' rights. As shown in the infographic in the slide, we can say that the UNESCO principles of human accountability by ensuring ultimate liability for AI actions is always attributable to a natural or legal person is prioritized. This doctrine is operationalized through a specific set of proposed digital rights. The draft policies introduce several forward looking rights, like the once only, which mandates the data be shared only via the WASL platform, and the right to meaningful human review. This allows any citizen subjected to an automated AI decision with legal effects to demand a human intervention. However, and this is a critical point, that because these are currently only found in soft law drafts, these rights are presently non justiciable or not legally binding in a court of law. The following policy recommendations can be drawn from these findings. Firstly, enacting the Personal Data Protection Bill that has been stalled since 2023. This will establish an independent supervisory authority. Secondly, reforming property laws to include fair use, exceptions for text and data mining, which is essential for training local Urdu models without the risk of copyright exclusion. Finally, we must regulate the gig economy to protect workers or freelancers from unchecked algorithmic management and automated terminations. As I sum up my research presentation, Pakistan's trajectory over the next few years hinges on its ability to transition from punitive executive led policing to a justiciable hard law framework. Innovation cannot flourish in a vacuum of rights. For Pakistan to truly become a digital nation and to establish the Uran Pakistan economic transformation, it must reconcile its sovereign ambitions with transparent constitutional protections for its citizens. With that, I conclude my presentations. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Okay, fellow, what is your observation and the key understanding of the
Was
Pakistan's
I
AI policy?
audible?
Yes, you are perfectly audible. I'm asking you, what is your observation and understanding of the key AI policy of Pakistan?
Sorry, sir, can you repeat?
What is your observation and
Due to
understanding
connectivity
of
issues,
the,
I couldn't
yeah,
hear you.
what is your observation? What is your observation and understanding of the key AI policy of Pakistan?
That these laws, there is a very large legal empty spaces and a lack of institutionalization. There are policies, but most of them are like just draft that has been not enforced yet, and most of them are soft laws that is one of my recommendation to enforce them into hard laws. Yeah, that's much of it.
All right. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you so much for the presentation. Now we move on to the next fellow, Ms. Deepika, who has conducted her research on the country Bangladesh. All the best and kindly follow the timer. Your timer begins now. Deepika, you're not audible.
Um, am I audible?
Yes, Deepika.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone present here. I will be presenting on the AI law, policy, and governance framework of Bangladesh. I will be examining how the nation is formulating its national AI strategy and what measures it can further adopt to safely guide the country's digital transformation. So to contextualize Bangladesh, so currently it is at a crucial macroeconomic crossroads as it is preparing to graduate from the least developed country status in 2026, as per the finance ministry. And what this graduation means is that it is going to lose a lot of its preferential trade tariffs, meaning that it is required to rapidly pivot towards an AI driven productivity system to remain globally competitive. But this is creating a paradox because while automation is vital for the country, it is threatening the labor intensive ready made garments sector, which is considered to be the backbone of Bangladesh's economy. And also, Bangladesh is currently ranked 82nd globally as per the Oxford Insights Government AI Index, meaning that it is significantly lagging behind many of its South Asian contemporaries. Um, so, in order to manage the shift from the focus on the ready-made garment sector to a more digitally sound economy, the state's governance framework is shifting from the Advisory 2020 roadmap, which is also known as the Smart Bangladesh 2041 vision document, to a more formalized draft national AI policy 2026 to 2030. So, this present policy is what governs most of the AI frameworks and AI related regulation in the country. It employs a risk based classification system, which is inspired by the European Union's AI Act, alongside a rights based ethical foundation, which is aligned with the UNESCO and OECD principles. So, the national draft policy has formally endorsed both UNESCO principles and OECD principles. And rather than creating one single regulatory agency, Bangladesh currently relies on decentralized and sector specific enforcement. So, to look at the specific laws, firstly, it has the draft national AI policy, as I just mentioned, and then it also has the Cyber Security Ordinance 2025, which replaced the controversial Digital Security Act. So, this particular ordinance currently penalizes cyber crimes that are caused by AI, such as critical information infrastructure attacks, the spread of deep fakes, and then we have the PDPO, which has now become the PDPA, as in the Personal Data Protection Act of 2026, passed in April. So this particular Act now governs and protects the rights of individuals with respect to personal data and privacy. And then there is the National Data Governance Ordinance, which centralizes data sharing, and it governs how institutions share, manage, and use data. And then there are also sector-specific laws such as the Constitutional Rights, Copyright Act, and the Pornography Control Act. And the AI laws also significantly have an interface with the consumer rights. And presently, what I could find from my research, the key findings of my research. So, in terms of governance and the sovereign AI, so the nation is clearly transitioning between a proactive governance or a reactionary governance under the Smart Bangladesh 2041 vision back in 2022 to a baseline digitalization to optimized algorithmic administration. So it is slowly moving towards specific regulation of AI. And secondly, the state is also pushing towards a sovereign AI system model, or made in Bangladesh AI model. For instance, it has come up with the National Bangla LLM to preserve not just the linguistic heritage, but to also prevent over reliance on Western or Chinese technology and AI models. So the government is funding such a domestic infrastructure for AI, despite a significant absence of hard law. So, in terms of the key findings with respect to deployment and sandboxes, currently, um, due to due to a significant importance given to state deployment for maintaining the safety concerns, commercial deployment remains nascent and fragmented in the country, with almost no private companies looking towards development in the AI sector in the nation. So, because there are no comprehensive AI laws, sectors such as banking heavily rely on regulatory sandboxes, which are controlled environments where fintech companies are able to safely test their AI models without facing penal liability. Now, some of the major challenges in implementation and due process that I was able to find is that despite the ambitious goal and despite a lot of soft laws and a lot of policy documents, major gaps exist in the system, not only in terms of implementation, but also in terms of how they're going about it. The largest implementation gap that I could find was that there is no specific enforceable act. As of now, there is only a draft that again heavily relies on an EU framework, and they do not have a statutory. Although it suggests the establishment of statutory bodies or institutional frameworks such as the National AI Ethics Board and the National AI Center for Excellence, or NICE, for coordination, implementation, standardization, and capacity building. All of these have not yet been implemented at the national level. And furthermore, the legal system does not have any algorithmic due process. There is no equivalence to the GDPR Article 22, even though they rely heavily on Western laws. The citizens do not have a legal pathway to demand an explanation if there is a if they suspect a black box, that the black box system that is existing, an automated black box system, if they suspect that their rights are being violated. And in terms of IP specifically, there are a lot of voids in the current system. Similar to a lot of its South Asian contemporaries, the copyright law, for instance, heavily prioritizes human authorship, and AI generated content is not just unprotected in terms of being registered or gaining copyright protection, but it also is unregulated. And this, on one hand, stifles innovation. On the other hand, it leads to a lot of content that is unregulated. And socioeconomically, automation is set to threaten up to 60% of the traditional industry in Bangladesh, which is going to risk millions of jobs. There is no particular soft law policy document that kind of addresses this gap. And finally, there are a lot of infrastructural deficits because, as I said, the entry of the private sector is extremely hindered in this particular country. So there is a severe shortage of national GPUs and there is a deep urban rural digital divide, even though the penetration of mobile and internet is very prevalent in both urban and rural parts of Bangladesh. So, some of my policy recommendations to resolve these issues. So, firstly, I would right now the AI Act, an act specifically to govern and regulate AI, is targeted by the country, by Bangladesh by 2028. So, I suggest that this be expedited because as of right now, what exists are merely soft measures which do not have any particular benefits or advantages other than being really ambitious. And I also suggest that the bodies that were recommended to be established under the national AI policy, that such as the Ethics Board and the NICE Center and the National Data Management Authority under the NDGO, be implemented on an immediate basis, as then they be set up. And to expand, I also suggest that sectoral sandboxes, such as in the fintech industry, be expanded to other sectors as well, such as healthcare and law enforcement, AI for law enforcement, on a rigorous testing basis. And I also suggest that algorithmic due process be implemented and be included in the data laws, and so that it can have a good interface with the AI law once enacted. And with in terms of IPR and the labor sector, specific specific specific guided and sector specific laws and measures have to be taken. It has to be considered, like the impact on certain industries and sectors has to be considered, essentially. And I would also suggest that the since AI is being implemented in the education sector a lot, as per my research, and especially in terms of secondary schooling, so there is a lot of gap in terms of skills and safety. So I would request integration of AI safely in these industries. And in conclusion, Bangladesh is demonstrating a very proactive and sophisticated approach with its foresight in terms of enacting the Smart Bangladesh and sovereign AI initiatives. However, fundamentally, it requires to close the implementation gap so that it can become successful, and it can rise in terms of not just private sector AI, but also in terms of how AI is being used by governmental institutions. And so it can safely balance both rapid technological modernization with fundamental rights of the citizens. Thank you.
Okay, fellow, what is your key observation throughout this research fellowship?
So from what I have seen, most of the reliance of um, the country that I was researching, Bangladesh, is mostly on policy documents or soft law measures, such as the 2041 vision document, which was passed, which was introduced in 2022, and the national AI draft policy. So it is they are very focused on actually developing this sector in terms of giving opportunities and employment to people. But there are a lot of so they are focusing on a sovereign model in terms of deployment of AI, but they are not focusing on a sovereign model of law. So they are heavily relying on, while they have implemented the UNESCO and OECD principles, they're heavily relying on the EU model directly, without considering the realities of various industries within, like domestic industries within the country. So I would like, what I found was, although they have made a lot of improvements, a lot of initiatives in terms of, for example, they have a government enabled AI model, which is prioritizing the Bangla language, Bangla LLM. It's called the Bangla LLM. So while they're heavily focused on both the tech aspect and the deployment of the technology, they're not that focused on passing a law. They just have soft law measures. So it is essential that they do something, as such as passing an act, or at least an act, or at least passing ordinances that institutes formal institutions, formal bodies, because right now there are no regulatory bodies as such that are at least functioning in the meantime. So this is what I was able to find.
All right. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you so much for the presentation, Deepika. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the final presentation for today's session. Congratulations to all our fellows who presented their research today. Each presentation reflected tremendous effort, critical thinking, comparative policy analysis, and scholarly excellence. And now, on behalf of the Center for Development of Intellectual Property and Research, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to our distinguished evaluation panel, members of the Board of Assessment, Director Sir, our academic collaborators, and to every fellow who successfully completed today's presentation and everyone who joined us live. We also thank our viewers from across the world for joining today's academic session. For those presenting tomorrow, presentation round 2 will commence at 10 a.m. following the notified schedule. Until then, stay safe, stay curious, and continue advancing responsible artificial intelligence research. Have a wonderful day. Jai Hind.